Okay, so guys, let's have a look at what is happening. So, we have now implemented something really cool, is design tokens. So, what design tokens are, I mean, largely you can have design tokens in many places. Let's actually have a look at GitHub real quick. And we're going to look at the Telegram app we're currently building. So we're going to look at the current set of color tokens that we have. So we're going to look at the index.css, look at the history here. Right, so before we had any kind of design tokens, we were using, and I'll show you here what we were doing. So when we had the repo in this current state, what we had in here was in our Tailwind config, we were mapping out some of these variables. And so we had a very simplistic system. It uses background and foreground, and then obviously some buttons and nav, which I don't like having a specific nav style, and you'll see why later. Nav is a form of surface like a card, and I prefer to keep nav, cards, stuff like that all under the surfaces category. But this is what we had, and it was quite a simple system, but it was also had like sort of weirdness about it. Like it had colors, but then all of a sudden it had a card and a nav. Like these seem to be similar things, but then we only have the option of foreground and background. What about, like muted? So it wasn't very consistent, and it wasn't very scalable, and it had a lot of issues with it. But this was fine because it allowed us to very quickly build our app without having to think about too much, which is really important when you're building a new app for the first time, of course, is you don't want to be caught up dealing with things. So this was our CSS file, and you could say here that these are design tokens. So this right here is a design token. The design token's name is background. The design token value is black, or sorry, white, I should say. And that's cool. So that's what we have here. But when we're building for many platforms, we're building for web, which is fine because we can use Tailwind, and Tailwind is awesome. It's great. I love Tailwind. You got a React Native. Tailwind sort of doesn't exist on React Native. I'm saying sort of because there is a movement to get Tailwind onto React Native at the moment, and I fully support that. There's also styled components. There's other things. You could be building an app in a Rust framework. You could be building an app for Windows. You could be building a native Swift app. Not all these systems use CSS, for example. So we want to have a sort of higher level schema or specifications of all the design tokens. And so as we see in here, this is an example where we can have colors, and the type is a color. You can have fonts such as base, secondary, tertiary, inverse fonts, so on and so forth. And so that's why we started with building our current tokens.json. So I want to go back a second before we actually get into the tokens.json, because you might be saying, where did all these tokens come from? And that's because our V1 design system that I created yesterday, and this was before we started using what is this called again? Style Dictionary. I don't even need to know the name. I just need to know how to use it, and I need to implement it. Who cares about the name? I'll write it down somewhere. I know I used it in this repo. I will remember it. The name is irrelevant. I'm not an AI, so I only remember things that are really relevant to me as a human being. So we have this CSS file, and we can see in here, if we go to src, index.css, and there we are. So this is our sort of completed design system, but the problem is this design system with all these design tokens and the way that it's specified is specific to Tailwind. Now I'm violating the Agni principle. I don't need it. We currently only develop 3 web apps, so I don't really need this. But seeing as I was like on a highly focused journey to design our design system and to be like, that's done, and then hand that off to other developers to maintain. I wanted to make sure that this was done right and done right the first time. So there was a lot of thought that went into this around the fonts. So we do want global fonts for all of our apps. We want color tokens bounded to a theme, so light theme, dark theme, and later on we can have high contrast light, high contrast dark, etc. So we do have themeability of our apps, starting with only light and dark, and we probably might keep that for a while, but it does allow us to do that. And then also layering, the system of layering the color tokens. So the color tokens only come in 3 layers, and that's a very sort of opinionated decision. I thought about using obviously, tokens like 100, 200, 300, 400 like Tailwind does in the base system. Like these sort of atomic tokens, but I figured it's better to have a 3-layer system because the way that we designed our UI when I redesigned our UI is that we should enforce no more than ever 3 layers. So you can see here this kind of works in such a way that we alternate the layers as well. And these are called surfaces. So you've got a background, you've got a surface, which is this card, then you've got a nested surface, which is this nested card here, and then at most you can have a 3rd nested surface within that, but I think that's kind of wrong. And so this is how the system works. Never any more than 3 layers. That's our design system. And actually when you look at websites, like we're looking at Figma here, many other websites, you might notice that usually you never ever get more than 3 layers of color contrast depth, because it becomes hard for the eyes to understand what's going on when there's too much depth. And we can actually see here in our original design, we did have 4 layers. And while this is acceptable at 4 layers, any more than this would be too much. So you can see here we've got background, card, then we've got a border layer, then this other layer, and then this sub layer. And this sub layer here is actually quite hard to see, to the point where all of this content in here almost like joins together. You can't distinctly see the separation between the different pieces of content, unlike you can in these later designs where you can very easily see that you've got multiple cards presented on a screen. So this is much better at a glance and much more easy to grok. So what we've done now is use my good friend ChatGPT 01, specifically the 01 model, because the 4.0 is faster, but it doesn't have reasoning. So it kind of just, you're like, hey, can you, like I give 01 some very specific instructions like I did here, because I'm lazy. And I'm not going to go and rewrite all this damn code, guys. Come on. This is like, if you're a designer, you're not going to go and draw things by hand. It's called using a CAD system. And this is what like ChatGPT is like CAD for programmers. I don't want to have to go and rewrite all this damn shit, all of these, and rewrite it all myself from scratch. It's going to take me over an hour. So I just paste this in and I'm just like, hey, ChatGPT, can you please do that? And please do these exact things, where I made it keep the hex value. And the hex value is kept there for a reason. I probably don't need this. So I might actually say, And then that's going to do this, and we're just going to clean that off. So the reason why I use ChatGPT so much is because it just saves me a lot of time. Now we can go and focus on other things, right? Well, that does that thing for me. So as we said, we've got, this is our tokens file. So we've got our global tokens, aka our fonts, specs, our sizes, and some font weights and line heights and some other things, which are cool. We also have our light color themes, and we've got these attributes. Now this attribute theme light is part of this specification. So there is the, in configuration, I believe, there is somewhere in the docs, it talks about attributes, right? And these attributes are sort of, this is an extensible thing that I can use. So I'm adding an attribute, like I'm specifying my own. I created a new attribute called theme, and then we have what is known as a transformer. So our transformer is going to, firstly, we have a problem where it's generating the theme tokens as like color, themes, light, color, dark, whereas my Tailwind config, I didn't want to have to change this. It just knows it's meant to be progress success BG, and like here is our output file, for example. You can see here that this is correct. It's white primary, but earlier what we were getting was like dash dash color white primary, or dash dash theme dash color, you know. And so obviously, and then we're actually getting this dash dash dark dash theme dash color, and we weren't getting this either. So that meant we had to change our sort of Tailwind configuration to use different design tokens in dark and light mode, which I don't want to do, because Tailwind config works in such a way that we only have to define these once. So you just say background should be background primary, and then it's going to look at the class, the dark mode class, and then go, okay, well, if it's dark, the dark mode is class, then go to dark mode.css, and pick the dark ones. From the dark ones, the background primary, right? So that's how that's going to work, which it should have a background primary in there. Somehow, yeah, the dark background primary, there it is. I was going to say somehow that isn't there. So while this has been doing its thing, let's have a look. So I probably only want any instance where we let's try this again. So obviously ChatGPT is being a bit retarded here, but at least it's not lopping off all my code, which the 4.0 model does that. It's like, oh, you want me to do that? Okay, I'll delete half the code and then do it, and then give this back to you, just to fuck with you, I swear. Okay, so we've got this tokens file now, and that's our tokens.json, right? Now we've got our transformer. Now our transformer is going to take these tokens and do a bunch of stuff using the style dictionary package. We're going to, specify some things here. It goes to our style.tokens.json file, and I'm going to remove these comments. So dot, vim, dot to repeat the last command. It's a very simple thing. Okay, so now it's going to call this transformer. And now we call this transformer in our package.json. So we have a generate command, generate types, generate tokens, generate command does both of them. We're going to run the start command, which runs generate. We're going to close this. And we also just want to make sure that we .git ignore the build folder. So we should we should remove the just build GS, and that should remove the build folder. Nice. We don't need to keep these CSS files in the project because they're generated dynamically, so that's good. Now we've also updated our index.css to import from the build the generated design token files. Then we're going to apply Tailwind based components and utilities, and then lastly we're going to apply our global styles. So we've got some global font styles, some global scroll bar styles, and then also some global focus styles. So that's the only globals that we are applying across all of our apps in the design system is fonts, scroll bars, and focus. We're going to leave the rest up to the individual developers of each product. So Tailwind is importing our CSS class. We run our start command, which runs generate. Generate will then generate the files. So you can see there that it just generated those files here. And then we're going to look in here and we can see this global, CSS. I forget that I wrote code in my Vim to hide things that are getting ignored as well. So, in fact, the other thing we're going to do here is go to our git ignore because we're actually using a dist folder. And so we're going to go to our generator. I usually call it transformer. And we're going to rename build to dist. And we're going to go to CSS. And we're going to also similarly redo that. How good is Vim? All right. So this is going to be saved in our dist folder now, which means that we don't need to add that to the git ignore anymore. So as I said, we run this command, and then I'm going to rm watch this, rm build, and it's going to say, oh no, would you like to use the force, young Padawan? Yes. So I don't have to type rf. I love that. So let's go start, and this should generate the types. Perfect. We've got our front end running. We should see that the front end works and that we haven't broken the color tokens by messing around. There we are, guys. Everything is working. We've got all of our colors dynamically injected into our app, just like that. How cool is that, guys? So that's it. Now we've got a tokens.json. We can actually now remove tokens.json out of this repo completely and import it using like a REST endpoint or whatever you want to do. You could even upload it to GitHub, and you could just have it as a static file that you reference. And that's it. That's your whole design system in one file. And then obviously you've got your CSS file where you can actually apply some global font styles specifically. which we need to do it this way, unfortunately, using Tailwind. That's okay. I don't think that's a problem. It's mostly the tokens that we're concerned about, and realistically we are applying the tokens in here, so that's all good. So what are they? I keep forgetting the name. Style dictionary. And that's it, guys. We've just built our V2 design system, just like that, using style dictionary. And now we can reuse this style dictionary later on to generate styles for multiple systems very easily, and we'll have all that consistency. So that's it. Really simple stuff, very cool, and I'm really excited. This was a really good exercise. I've built my first serious, proper design system. It's scalable. I'm happy with it. It's working across 2 apps. We can also take these guys, and I'll tell you this is the really cool thing. So we take these tokens.json and import them into Figma. And now you've got Figma, your web apps, your React Native apps, your Windows apps, all your apps using the same exact schema for your design system. That's cool. That's something that really excites me. I love the idea of having one single global schema and being able to use like code like these transformers and these generators to dynamically generate the source from a declarative file such as this tokens.json. It's a really cool thing. So that's it. That's my little design system hacking today. We're pretty much done now. I'm going to do a little bit of a run through again, playing around with building some more components in our Telegram app, which I am the lead of, and then I'm going to hand this off to some other developers to implement this design system into our web apps, and it's going to be great. It's going to be consistent, it's going to look good, and it's also going to work with Figma, which I'm super excited about. Now that I've been using Figma, it's a really cool tool, and I'm really excited to start getting into it more because it's pretty awesome. So that's it, guys. We're done.